Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Allen, and my friends know that I don't normally like to do things like this in public, but for all the students, I do want to say I'm the James Bryant Conant University Professor at Harvard University. And you can be too. That position was held previously by John Rawls, the most important political philosopher of the 20th century. So, I've got some work to do. I'm also a student of Cornell West, I wanted to say. And this is an afternoon and evening for legacy and genealogy. That's what we're talking about, and all the shoulders that we stand on. It's also about presiding spirits. Some of mine are here tonight. Kerry knew that already. He's been one of my presiding spirits for a long time. It's an old connection in Chicago. Rita didn't know that until tonight, but you have been, mother love. This was a girl who wanted to be a poet and who looked for presiding spirits in the world. And Rita Dove, the remarkable poet, made space and shelter, made clear that there was room and a welcome. As we've heard so much already, this year's Hutchins Center honorees are possessed of numerous gifts and vast talents. All are at the top of their chosen fields and callings. I would venture a guess, though, that only one honoree in the history of the Du Bois medals is a Pulitzer Prize winner, was the youngest and first African-American poet laureate of the United States, won both a National Humanities Medal and a National Arts Medal, was awarded an honorary Doctor of Letters by Harvard, has played viola da gamba with an early music group, sung with her university's operatic society, and is an accomplished ballroom dancer. Rita contains multitudes. Harvard's own distinguished professor of poetry, Helen Vendler, wrote of Rita's poetry, "She planes away unnecessary matter, leaving only pure shapes." Skip has said that her writing is steeped in Black literary and historical tradition. It is suffused with the rhythms and the images of the Black vernacular. It is elegant and ordinary, and that's what makes it an opening. What we see in Dove's poetry, whether its subject is her grandparents' marriage or the career of Beethoven's young Black apprentice, is a reverence for the lives of ordinary people, those, as she puts it, who will never make it into the history books. This reverence extends to their interior lives, for as she has said, if we don't acknowledge our own interior lives, we don't permit others to have them. The mutual recognition of interiority is the most secure barrier against inflicting harm or brutality on others. As poet laureate, a post she held from 1993 to 1995, her mission was to elevate poetry to a level of national importance that society rarely grants it. Her cause was to communicate that while poetry may not change the world, though I disagree with you there, Rita, poetry changes the world. But what you said was, even if we don't want to make that claim because of our humble hearts, it can change a heart, it can change a moment. Characterized by this mission to elevate and educate, Dove's career has also been devoted to finding and restoring the Black lives so often sidelined or lost within the European literary tradition. The tradition that housed, but didn't necessarily nourish her. This impulse to expand the landscape of what is understood as mainstream canonical poetry was at work when she performed the role of sole editor of the Penguin Anthology of 20th Century American Poetry. Think of what that means for Rita Dove to have given us the anthology of 20th century American poetry. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. She just changed our world. She got pushback for her anthology. She troubled received wisdom in her choices and collections. And she said about that, raising hackles means you're not being ignored. You're pushing the conversation forward. She has pushed this conversation forward for many years in a language uniquely hers, but available to all of us. American Academy of Poets Chancellor Ellen Bass said of her writing, "The depth of Rita Dove's insight is astonishing. She sees into our most complex relationships and renders those truths with startling precision. She delivers us to ourselves. With technical virtuosity and luscious music, her poems torch us with beauty and brutality, innocence and ruin. Fiercely political and exactly intimate, this is brilliant poetry at its height." As Jamaica said, you can't talk about a poet without hearing a poet. I picked a poem about Demeter also, as it happens. Demeter's prayer to Hades. There's a theme. So just a small number of my favorite lines from Rita Dove. "This alone is what I wish for you. Knowledge. To understand each desire and its edge. To know we are responsible for the lives we change. For the lives and worlds she has opened up to us and changed. And for her reconstitution of the canon of American poetry, the Hutchins Center recognizes Rita Dove with a W.E.B. Du Bois Medal."
Thank you. You need good posture for this medal. It's heavy. There are so many people I'd like to thank, but we'll be here until the next winter rolls in. So instead, I'd like to tell you how W.E.B. Du Bois saved me at an incremental, really amazing moment of my life. To do that, however, I must go back to one of my beginnings. In that beginning was a mother who, though she had skipped 2 classes in high school and was given a scholarship to Howard University, was not allowed to go because her parents thought she was too young at 16 to go off alone to college. But this mother loved literature, and on a good day, and there were many good days, she could be found in the kitchen slicing up the family roast, declaiming, "Is this a dagger I see before me, the handle toward my hand?" I, as a child, did not know that that was Shakespeare. I thought it was my mother talking jive. She did that well. And so when I did come across those lines of Macbeth years later, it was too late. My mother had already claimed ownership. And to paraphrase what Elizabeth said so eloquently, that Du Bois quote, "She sits with Shakespeare and he winces not." It also begins with a father who was a chemist. In fact, he was the first black chemist in the rubber industry. I did not know that as a child. I did not know that he had ferried his classmates in the elevator before they finally broke that barrier. What I did remember, however, was how he loved to read history, and on 3x5 index cards, he would write mini reviews of each book that he read, and I'd find them tucked in the jacket flaps. And I looked for those mini reviews. They were like these love letters from my father saying, read this, or don't read this, whichever he wanted. And so there was poetry in the house, and there were books on the shelves. For that, I am eternally grateful. And I read those books voraciously without knowing that they were supposed to be difficult, because like Elizabeth's parents, they let me read everything, thank goodness. But there was one book I could not read because it was in another language. It was in German. It was a beautiful little letterpress volume of Schiller's Lied von der Glocke, Song of the Bell, a long poem, and I wanted to read that poem. It turned out my father, before going off to World War II, had decided that he should learn the language of the enemy. Those are his words, not mine. And so, because he did not know where he was going to be deployed, he taught himself basic Italian and German. And that little book gotten from a secondhand bookstore was part of his self-education. And that's how I became interested in German. And so I studied it, and then I discovered that I shared a birthday with Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who happened to be a mentor of Schiller, who had written this marvelous poem. So I had to read all of him too, of course. And I discovered that my love for tangents, for going off in different directions, for following something and learning as much about it as I could, was something that I had shared with Goethe. One of my professors in college, in fact, gave me a little slip of paper, and he said, you might need this later on down the line, and I kept it in my wallet for years. It was a quote by Faust, in Goethe's Faust, where he says, entbehren sollst du, sollst entbehren. It means thou learn to live without, basically. And I thought, well, why did he give me this? So I took this Yoda bit of, advice with me and went to Germany. I was in Germany for a year as a Fulbright student, and there I truly felt homesick. I felt homesick for my people, for my language, for my community and everything. And so I went to the library to find some English. And I remembered, of course, that W.E.B. Du Bois had been in Germany 80-some years before that. Perhaps he could help me. So I got out Souls of Black Folk again. I reread it, and there was that quote, entbehren sollst du, sollst entbehren, which he had put down too. And I realized that it wasn't that Faust was saying, you have to do without, but he was saying, why do I have to do without? Grab it all. So I remembered my mother belting out Shakespeare in the kitchen. I remembered my father with those 3x5 index cards, and I just sucked it in and said, I'm carrying on. That led me back to the States, back to volunteering to translate the German lecture for a German novelist who turned out to be my husband. Sitting in the audience today, 43 years of arguing over prepositions and past participles. And I can thank W.B. Du Bois for that. I also thank the Hutchins Center, Skip, treasured friend for, we go way back, okay? For so many years. And all of you out there, believe in your dreams, follow your tangents. They come together somehow if you love it. Thank you.